Curriculum Management. So glad y'all could be here for the conference today. It's my pleasure to introduce Ryan Reeves, Suzanne Weatherly, and Elizabeth Pena, and they're going to talk to you all about reading strategies for Corequisites. Thank you.
All right. How's everyone doing this morning? Good. All right, good. So today we're going to talk about reading strategies, and our idea was to specifically cater this toward composition instructors, right? A quick show of hands, how many of you teach reading strategies in your classes? Right here. All right.
There's a group of experts.
So let's do this. All right. So I want to start here. Does everyone have a sheet of paper?
Yes.
You don't. Just be a show of hands, and I'll give you text.
So let's do this. I want you to write down what strategies do your students use when reading, and I also want you to jot down what strategies your students struggle with in terms of reading.
Sorry.
So let's take about 30 more seconds. Yeah, no, and we're just jotting down right now. Okay, so go ahead and pair up, and I guess, or pair up in threes, maybe try it, I suppose, and discuss both of these questions. What strategy do your students use, and how do they struggle in reading? And we'll take no more than 3 minutes. So, what strategies do your students use when they're reading?
The first 2 pages right before class.
Okay. I need to read, I'm trying to read as much as possible before class starts, right? Strategy, right?
Prior knowledge and basically a little guiding.
Okay.
Some of the skills that they, do.
Okay. So they try to activate STEAM. What else?
Well, I wrote down highlight NLP, pre-reading strategies, reviewing and revising after they read, and we used graphic organizers last semester as well, and before. That was a bit of a struggle for some of them.
Now, even though your students are using these strategies, and it sounds like, well, I'm making an assumption, but those strategies that your students use, did you teach those strategies, or were they already using those strategies? Okay, all right. What strategies do your students still have trouble with?
compare kind
Compared to, and explain that a little bit more, please.
Well, if you just have a few characters in the story, how to line them up within their differences as opposed to what they're doing in the story or what's mentioned in the story.
Okay.
Even if it's events, comparing the events, it doesn't have to necessarily be a person.
Okay. And that sounds like analysis, right? Maybe synthesis or those skills. What else? Okay. Thinking about from reading, meaning both stated and unstated?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Just reading rhetorically, like who's the audience, when was it published, where was it published?
Okay.
Just basic context.
Okay. Anything else, Brian? All right.
So there are such a multitude of factors involved with what each individual student is dealing with. Sometimes we think it's just one thing, and it's really the brain doing everything at the same time and quickly. So for quick, efficient processing. And that is difficult. It's not that it's difficult because they're not smart or they can't do it. It's difficult because we are so fast-paced. We're human beings, we get distracted. Our students may not be interested, surprise, in what they're reading. They have to have such a high, intense focus while we're asking them to comprehend that it's really tough mental work. It really is. It's about thinking. So some of the things that I see or have seen in the years I've been doing this, our students simply don't have, some students, the lack of background knowledge they need to increase their comprehension of the content. And that varies student by student. For instance, the other day we were reading an essay about a pilot that she never had to, but on 9/11 she was ready to pilot the plane and give her life to strike the plane that eventually landed in the field. She didn't have to, the plane went down, but when my students were reading it, I could tell by their age that their background knowledge of 9/11 was not what mine was. And so we really had to often build that up. One of the things you can do for your students very quickly, 1-2 minutes like we just did with you guys, is to have them turn and talk to each other and share what they do know about a topic. It's quick, it's easy, it's not rocket science. They just have to start talking about the content. Their reading rate. Often students are confused by how much your reading rate really matters to your comprehension. If you're struggling slowly to decode, your comprehension is lower. You're working on decoding and not comprehending. So it is no secret that our students need to have a fluent reading rate to be able to understand what they're saying. Low comprehension relates to the two above it. If your reading rate is slow, your comprehension will be lower. Not fluent involves things like phrasing. Phrasing is when, for example, an introductory statement, students have to read like they're talking. There should be no spaces between their words when they're reading silently. And when their reading rate slows down and they're not phrasing, your comprehension is lower. Rereading really helps with fluency. Students think that if they have to reread something, there's something wrong with them. It's the exact opposite. It's because you're rereading that makes you a better reader. Sometimes we have a low knowledge level of words, with prefixes, suffixes, and root words, and of course that contributes to their comprehension because they're not sure how to figure out what the word means. Same thing, this ties to context clues. If you don't know what the word means, you can't understand what the author is trying to tell you, what the author's message is. And so I have my students, I really encourage them to not use their phones to look a word up because they get sucked into social media. I really encourage them to just use a paper dictionary because you can look a word up quickly, get back to what you're doing. A lot of my students, I ask them to put apps on their phone for vocabulary and word meaning. But again, you're really crossing a line when you have them pick up their phone to look a word up. They're just going to start checking everything else on their phone. And we will too. I mean, we just get sucked in by, oh, let me just respond to this. It's really just better to use a paper dictionary. Low vocabulary ties in to the two things above it. If you're not able to know what a prefix means or the root word, the definition of a root word, that ties into a lower vocabulary, and then you can't comprehend what you're reading. So when you look at this slide and you think, I do all that when I'm reading, you do. You just do it very efficiently. And our students sometimes need help to process all those things very quickly. All right, next slide. This is just a really good quote. Baca and Baca are pretty known in the K-12 world for content area reading. In order to comprehend text successfully, skilled readers must be able to, all at the same time, decode or pronounce words quickly and accurately, read with fluency, activate vocabulary knowledge in relation to the language of the text, and put into play text comprehension strategies to understand their reading. It has to happen all at the same time. And so if you have students that are struggling, it's very possible that one of those things on the previous slide or more is getting in the way of their comprehension.
All right, so we know that you all are probably really comfortable using the writing process, right, in your co-write classes. But we really want to emphasize the reading process as well. So we're going to spend some time with you all this morning to model what the reading process would look like in our classes. All right, so can you join in me with an activity, a pre-reading activity? So there's a lot of before reading activities that you can do. For example, you can determine the rhetorical situation. You can activate prior knowledge. You can define vocabulary words. You can contextualize. You can make connections. And you can look like a reader. What do you think we mean by look like a reader? What do you think that means?
Maybe pen in hand or...
Okay, yes. What else? Yeah, definitely. Anything else? So, do you want to talk about the...
Yeah, I just want to, this is so simple, but I emphasize this so much in my classes. You all right now look like readers. You look like you're at work. And if we want our students to study and be proficient, they have to look like they're working. So I often tell my students when they say, reading puts me to sleep, no it doesn't. Where are you reading? In my bed? Okay, so that's why. You have to be sitting up, good lighting, water, pen, paper, highlighter. You have to look like you're at work. And our students often want to cuddle up with a blanket, on a rainy day on the couch and try to handle an informational textbook. That's really what you look like when you're reading for pleasure. That's when that's appropriate. But I talk to my students over and over about, you better look like you're at work when you're trying to do your homework. Because if you look like you're on the beach reading a romance novel, you don't have the strategies in place to read that nonfiction text that you're trying to comprehend. You have to be working. And I also just beg them, please don't come home and do your English homework when you've worked a 12-hour shift. You just have to go to sleep. You're just going to have to read when you're fresh and awake. And for some people, that's different times of the day.
All right, so we're going to model a before reading activity. So you all everybody should have 10 little mini post-it notes in front of you, yes? So if you can, please just separate each pen and just make like a square in front of you, just so you can see all the post-it notes in front of you. So hopefully everybody has 10. All right. So we're going to be reading a book this semester. And before we read this book, I want you to be able to experience what some of the characters in the book are also experiencing. So what I'm going to have projected are a list of 20 values. And what I want you to do is I want you to study the values very carefully. All right. All right. Can everybody see that? Is it okay? I want you to choose 10 that are most important in your life and write those 10 on each of your Post-it notes. Okay? So choose 10. So out of these values that you see, what are 10 that are most important to you in your life? And just write those on your Post-it notes. All right. So if you please, will you study your 10 that you have in front of you very carefully and really think about why you chose those, right? Out of the 20, why did these 10, why were they most important to you? So just take a minute to connect to these 10. All right. 5 of these Post-it notes are going to have to go. So now you have to narrow it down by half. What are the 5 values that are most important to you? So take 5 away and don't look at them anymore because they're officially gone. In your life. What you value. So take 5 away, please. And you should only have 5 now in front of you. No, next time I should add pets. I forgot to add pets here, right? Next time. All right, so does everybody now have 5 in front of you, yes? Okay, can you study those 5 values in front of you? And again, think to yourself, why are these most important to you? What do you value most? All right, one of those post-it notes has to go. So take away 1. So now you're left with 4. All right. So look at the 4 that you have in front of you. Again, connect with those values. Why did you choose them? Another one's going to have to go. So take away another post-it note. So now you have 3. Okay? So look at your 3. Why did you choose those 3? Do y'all think you know what's coming next? Yeah. Take 1 away. So now you're left with 2. All right, so look at your 2. Why are those important to you? And then take 1 away. And now you're left with 1. All right, so if we had more time, I would have us do some sharing, but do you think we have like a minute or 2? Maybe a minute. Does anybody want to share which post-it note they have left and why they chose it? Anybody? Thank you.
Yeah, family.
Family and
me, that's my whole life.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Anybody else? Did anybody else choose family? Yeah. Did anybody have something different? Do you mind sharing?
I wound up with health.
Okay.
But by virtue of the fact that I wound up with health, it sort of encompasses all the other things that are required to attend.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Anybody choose something? Yes, ma'am. Water. Okay. Value precious resource. Yes. Love. All right. Students, can you look at that post-it note in front of you? Because that also needs to go away. All right. So I wanted you to do this activity because the book that we're going to be reading this semester deals with all those choices that, again, we did in these past, 5-10 minutes. This is what the characters in the book have to do. Those same decisions they also have to make. So this is a story of an immigrant, right, who makes this dangerous journey to the United States. And I'll pass the book around so you can see it. But I wanted you to put yourself in the shoes of somebody who had to make these tough decisions, right, about what I value most in our life and what we have to sacrifice, right, in order to survive, right, or in his case, he's reuniting with his mother. So I'll pass the book around, but that's an example of a pre-reading activity, right, that I would do with my students to sort of set the context of what we're going to be reading and, again, to connect with the characters before we actually physically start choosing. So we're going to segue into now the during reading step of the reading process.
So Brian is passing out a very short passage from Enrique's journey.
This is an excerpt from the prologue.
I'm glad you said that. I haven't read the book, and I read this last night to prep. And I thought, I was just trying to figure out the book. I haven't read it. Another little just tidbit. When I'm teaching the reading process to my students, I'm letting them know it doesn't often take 45 minutes to do a pre-reading. We're just exaggerating those steps for you, as well as when you're teaching them in the semester, of course you're taking a longer time to teach them because you want to ingrain that in them. But once you have learned the reading process, just like the writing process, it goes much more quickly. Because if students think it's going to take 30 minutes to do a pre-reading strategy, they most likely won't do it. But activating your background knowledge can be very, very a quick process. So during reading, you've got to look like you're working. You have to look like you're at work. You have to look like a reader. So I tell my students they always have to have highlighters and pens, and I prefer several different colors of highlighters because some of my students make a coding system. You know, blue always means this is a new word. Yellow always means, I don't know, important. Pink might mean this confused me. Green could mean I made a connection. But I do encourage my students to make a coding system with their colors and to use that system throughout college so that in every content area, they have a system and they know what those colors mean. So during reading, what does it look like to be an active, involved reader who's engaged with the text? You have to annotate. You have to make notes in the margin. You don't have to worry about your spelling or your grammar or your handwriting when you're annotating. You just have to see your writing in the margin. Because when you look back, your notes, especially in your own handwriting, will trigger your memory of that content. You don't have to remember everything you read. No human can. So those notes that you write are going to trigger your memories when you're studying for an exam. You're going to highlight strong lines and important ideas. A strong line is something that, for whatever reason, speaks to you. It could be a connection. You could think it's important. You could just really like the wording or the language. Asking questions as you're reading. Some of your annotations can be a question. If you are mentally asking a question, that keeps you alert and focused. It keeps your brain ready to find the answer to what your question is. Making connections. I was in K-12 before I came to college, and everything we learned about making connection was about 3 kinds. Text to self, text to world, and text to text. When I think about something, it's either going to remind me about something I've read or a movie, something in my own personal life, which would be text to self, or something in the world, like something on the news last night. Rereading, this is the big one. This is the one our students think they're low if they have to do. No. It's the most crucial part of comprehension is to go back and confirm. If you have a question that you've asked, you may not know it until you're done, and you may have to go back to confirm that question. And if you're doing a good job highlighting and annotating, your highlights and annotations will often answer the question you asked once you get really good at finding the important ideas. So just for the sake of time, let's just read the very first paragraph right here. A common choice. As you read, I want you to do all of these things. So I'm going to give you about 2.5 minutes to read that one paragraph, and then I'll check back in with you and see what you did. We don't have a document camera up here. What I normally do is I turn my document camera on and I really heavily model my thinking while I'm reading. So for purposes of this with no document camera, I know even if you're in the very back, you can just see there's writing and highlighting. I let my students know, I kind of model a little bit, some chunks at a time, reading aloud. So that's what I'm gonna do for you guys right now, because I want my students to see how much thinking there is in reading. You don't just passively sit back. If you're passively sitting back, you're probably not comprehending. You're just calling out sounds. I was struck by the choice mothers face when they leave their children. So when I read that sentence, it pulled at my heart. I immediately thought of Sophie's Choice. It's a literary reference to a movie where she had to choose. The Nazis were asking her which child to take, her boy or her girl. And in the movie, later on, she explained she gave them her daughter because she thought her son was stronger and could survive. And she thought her daughter was going to die anyway because she was younger and smaller. So when I read that sentence, I thought, leaving their children, and I highlighted it and I wrote Sophie's Choice. How did they make such an impossible decision? I circled impossible and I wrote never. Never in my mind could I walk away from my children. Among Latinos, where family is all important, where for women, motherhood is valued far above all else, why are droves of mothers leaving their children? Another concept to teach your students. When you're coming to a sentence that ends in a question mark, you've got to have your voice go up or you don't know you're asking a question. Our students can only be fluent when they're reading like they're talking. And for me, for that sentence, before I prepped for this today, I had to read that sentence about 4 times. Because when the line ended, where for women, my voice was not sounding right. And I had to go to the end of the sentence to figure out what I was trying to mean and then go back. I don't know if y'all got stuck on that when you were reading, but I did. And so I point that out to my students to let them know, even at my stage in life, even after all I've read, even after teaching reading, I have to read things more than one time. And I think I'm a good reader, but I have to do it because nobody does it right the first time. No matter how good you get, they have to hear you say that even as your teacher, I've got to read things a couple times to get it right. What would I do if I were in their shoes? Would I come to the United States where I could earn much more money and send cash back to my children? This would mean my sons and daughters could eat more than sugar water for dinner. They could study past the 3rd grade, maybe even finish high school, go on to university classes. Or I could stay by my children's side, relegating another generation to the same misery and poverty I knew so well. So my annotations say, is this about immigration? This is horrible. So you can see my annotations are not like some research-based rocket science. They're simply my thoughts. But when I go back to look at those annotations, it's going to trigger what I was thinking, which will then help my memory, which will then help prepare me for whatever I'm being asked to do with that information. Students have to see your annotations. You have to get up on that document camera and show them your messy handwriting and your highlighting and your questions and what you did to look at a word you didn't know, because they have to know that that's okay to do that. They often feel intimidated by an expert reader from the class.
All right, so would everyone take out a sheet of paper? You can use the same page you have been working on. And I want to emphasize that Suzanne's modeling the reading process is important, because what I found about myself, and you may do this as well, is that we take things for granted, right? More than likely, school was fairly easy for us, right? Or we were able to overcome those challenges that we had, and we take certain things for granted. So, how many times have you thought when a student didn't do something or didn't get an answer right, you thought, why not, right? If a student didn't highlight the right thing, for instance, well, it may be obvious to us. So it's important to model, so like Suzanne said, so that they can see that we are readers as well. All right. And I think that's one of the components that's missing in terms of composition instructors who become co-ed instructors, right? We can't take those things for granted. And sometimes we don't know what we take for granted, right? Until we realize what we take for granted, right? So we're going to do some post-reading activities, or one post-reading activities, reflect. So after students have read, you have several options: reflect, respond, summarize, right? Here's what I want you to do. On that sheet of paper, I want you to think about those values that you had to choose, right? How did that feel, having to choose among the things that you care about the most, right? What was that process like? Just jot down those ideas. You had to choose between love and your family, right? Or love and family and your pet. You want to pet with them, right? Now I want you to predict, right? What do you think is going to, and actually, how do you think the characters are going to react to having to make these same choices? What do you think is going to happen in the book that you are about to read? All right, so let's try to predict based on our experience with the activities we've done so far, and just maybe a couple of sentences. Quickly, let's do a pair and share, right? Try and treat. Just share either your first response about your personal feelings about having to let go of values, or share what you are going or what you think is going to happen in the rest of the book. Right? Starting now. To the students because of these activities, right? Even if you're teaching a text that doesn't involve characters, and depths of nonfiction, but you can do the same strategies with any text, but you just have to kind of figure out exactly what specific ideas you want the students to stick with as they're reading, right? So they're going to focus on this aspect, this whole idea of losing values, losing yourself, losing things you love in order to exist here. All right.
So Elizabeth is passing out a sheet of what I just call good quotes. I mean, they're just really good. They come from this book, Teach Students How to Learn, and I have the title of it on the sheet she's passing out. Our division, everyone in our division, maybe 3 years ago, I can't remember, read this book, and was it a book club? Who can remember? It's an awesome book. It's more about thinking than reading. It's really good though, but I just wanted to share those quotes with you. So dispel myths with your students. Tell them, no, reading does not put you to sleep. If you crawl up in your bed, it does. But if you're at work, no. Good readers, in fact, what makes them good readers is when you slow down, go back, and use aids to read effectively. That's what makes you a good reader. You're not a remedial reader if you go back to confirm or check. I tell my students I lock the door at night, but then I always go back and check. It doesn't mean I'm slow. It means safety is important to me. So if you go back to check when you read, it means comprehension is important to you. You want to check. There's no other way to say that third bullet. If you want to become a better reader, you have to read. You have to put in the time, just like baseball practice. Once you learn a new vocabulary word, it's like buying a car. I had a student once, we were talking about vocabulary words years ago that I used to teach, and she told me, you know, obtuse was one of the words on that list for last week, and my husband and I have watched this favorite movie of ours about 40 times. She said, I watched it after I learned the word obtuse, and in the opening line of the movie, one character calls another, he says, you're being obtuse. She said, I've watched that movie like 40 times, I've never heard that word. And she said, it's like you buy a new car and then you see it everywhere on the freeway. Once you learn a word, before that, it's just been flying over your head, like someone you didn't know. And then once you learned who that person was, or learned that new word, you then see it all the time. So you've been missing out on vocabulary words all your life, but once you learn it, you're then able to comprehend. So every teacher is a reading teacher. Math, science, history, sociology. You're all reading teachers because your students need to read to comprehend your material. So just keep reminding your students you've got to be engaged while you're reading, or you're just calling out words. There's no thinking going on.
Any questions?
No questions? Oh, wow, okay. Thank you.
Could you go back to a slide that said summary?
Oh, to sum it up. Ran out of time just a little bit. This kind of sums up everything we talked about. I think the only new thing on there might be this last one. Strategies that I often ask. Questions I ask my students to think about while they're reading. If something doesn't sound right when they've read it, like that sentence I told y'all about in the first paragraph, I had to reread it because it wasn't sounding right. If something's not sounding right, you've got to stop and go back.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it. All right.
Thank you.